It was a regular Saturday dinner, nothing special. That is, until my dad made a joke that crushed me. "Sophie? Oh, she'll stay home and watch the kids while we're gone." And just like that, I was erased from my family's most anticipated event of the year, a luxury trip that everyone was excited about, except me. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I'm Sophie, 16, and I've always been the odd one out. My family is complicated. My dad, Ben, is a successful businessman who always seems to have time for everyone except me. My mum, Grace, is more like a roommate than a mother. She's always busy with her work. And then there's Max, my 18-year-old brother, the golden child, and Emily, my 13-year-old sister, who still gets doted on like she's the baby of the family. I guess that's what happens when you're the middle child. This wasn't the first time I'd felt overlooked, but this felt different. This was a slap in the face. My family was planning a luxury trip to Europe, one that they'd been talking about for months. It was a big deal, like a once-in-a-lifetime type of deal. And for once, I thought maybe I would be included. But when I asked if I could go, all I got was a laugh from my dad and a snide, "Stay home and watch the kids." Why wasn't I invited? Was I just an afterthought? Did I do something wrong? These questions echoed in my head as I sat there, trying to fight back tears. I thought this family was supposed to care for me, yet here I was, alone in my pain, watching them plan the trip of a lifetime while I was dismissed like I didn't even matter. And that's when it hit me. What if this wasn't just about a trip? What if this was about how my family saw me? I wasn't just the last one picked for the vacation. I was the last one picked, period. Show why this moment matters. This wasn't just about being excluded from a trip. It was about years of feeling like I didn't belong, like I wasn't important enough to be considered. I've always been the quiet one, the invisible one, the one no one remembers until they need someone to watch the kids or help with something. But this time, it was different. This time, I wasn't going to let it slide. I wasn't going to stay in the background anymore. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I stood up, trembling with a mix of disbelief and anger. I wanted to scream, but instead I said, "I'm not staying behind. I'm not going to be left out again." The family's eyes shot to me, frozen. Everyone was silent. And then, I made a decision that would change everything. I couldn't just let it slide. I was tired of being overlooked. So, I did what I've never done before. I called a family meeting. Right there, at the dinner table. I was done pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. My dad, Ben, has always been the one with the final say. He's the big boss, the guy everyone listens to, even when he's being completely unreasonable. My mum, Grace, isn't much better. She's always too busy for anyone. Her work takes up all her energy, and when she's home, she's checked out. Max? He's the golden child, the one who gets praised for doing the bare minimum. And then there's Emily, my younger sister, who gets spoiled and coddled, even at 13. No one seems to notice how badly I've been treated. No one seems to care. That's why this moment felt so heavy. I couldn't understand why they thought it was okay to leave me behind. I wasn't some little kid anymore. I could handle a trip. I wasn't asking for a 5-star vacation every year, Just for once, I wanted to feel like I was a part of this family. But instead, I was the last one picked. Again. When I brought it up at the dinner table, my dad brushed it off. "You're not old enough for this kind of trip, Sophie," he said, as if that was a valid excuse. Max and Emily stayed quiet, but I could see their eyes darting between me and my dad, unsure of how to react. I hated that feeling, like I was the problem in this family. But that wasn't it, was it? I didn't want to stay home with the kids. I didn't want to be the afterthought anymore. They didn't understand me, and I couldn't figure out why. Why did my parents treat me like I was less than my siblings? And then there was the most gut-wrenching part, the part that hit me like a brick. When my dad laughed and said, "Stay home and watch the kids." It wasn't just about me not going on a trip. It was about how little I mattered. It was as if my entire existence was just secondary to theirs. I could feel my heart racing, but I didn't want to back down. I was hurt, I was angry, and I wasn't going to let it go. I wanted to stand up for myself, but I also felt terrified. The more I looked at them, the more it felt like they were just waiting for me to give in, to accept my place as the background character in their lives. But I didn't want to be invisible anymore. The tension in the room was suffocating. I could see it on their faces, embarrassment, guilt, confusion. But no one was brave enough to address the real issue. They were so focused on the trip that they didn't even realize how deeply this was affecting me. I couldn't take it anymore. I took a deep breath and stood up, looking my dad in the eye. "I'm not staying behind," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "If you think I'm going to let this slide, you're wrong." The entire room fell silent. My dad's face turned red with anger, and I knew this wasn't going to be pretty. And then I made the mistake of asking, "Why can't I go?" The room was still. The tension was unbearable, and my dad's face was turning a shade of red I'd never seen before. "What did you just say?" he finally spat, his voice sharp, like he was trying to regain control of the situation. Everyone was watching now, and the eyes of my siblings burned into me. This was it. The moment everything was about to explode. I could feel the walls closing in on me. I had nothing to lose anymore. I couldn't just back down and let my dad's words hang in the air. This wasn't about the trip. It was about my entire life. About feeling like I was the invisible one, always left behind. I needed to fight for myself. So, I took a step forward and repeated, "Why can't I go? What makes me so different from Max and Emily?" My dad's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand, Sophie," he snapped. "This isn't for someone your age. You're just not ready for something like this." My stomach twisted. The same words, over and over. Not ready. It felt like he was telling me I'd never be enough, like nothing I did would ever be good enough. He had no idea how hard I tried to fit in, to be the daughter he could be proud of, but all I got were excuses and dismissals. Max looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat, but he didn't say anything. Emily was watching me like I was some kind of alien, unsure if she should side with me or just keep quiet to avoid trouble. They weren't going to help. That's when something snapped in me. I wasn't going to let them define me anymore. I wasn't going to be that person who just waited for validation. I wanted to prove I was more than their last-minute afterthought. Without thinking, I stood up straight and said, "Fine. If I can't go on the trip with you guys, I'll make my own trip. I'll do something way better than this luxury vacation, and I'll show you I can make it happen." My words hung in the air, and for a second I thought my dad would laugh it off like he always did. But instead, he just stared at me, his mouth slightly open. My mum, as usual, stayed silent, her face unreadable. My family was staring at me now, some confused, some disbelieving, and others just plain indifferent. But I didn't care anymore. The idea was starting to form in my head. I didn't need them to go on a fancy trip to prove my worth. Maybe I could show them how far I could go without them. I had nothing to lose. The problem was, what could I possibly do to make this trip of mine a reality? I didn't have the money, the resources, or even the support. But I would figure it out. If I had to break every rule, I would. Before anyone could respond, I turned to leave the room, my mind racing. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this family walk all over me anymore. I had to act fast. My dad called out after me, his voice cold and angry. "You think you can pull this off? We'll see." I didn't turn around. I just walked out, determined to prove them all wrong. And that's when I made the biggest decision of my life. I ran out of the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I couldn't back down now. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was fueled by something deeper. I was going to show them. I was going to make sure my family saw me for who I truly was. I met up with my best friend Lena, who had been following my entire meltdown from the group chat. She could tell I was serious, but even she looked a little worried when I told her what I planned to do. "Sophie, are you sure about this? It sounds risky." I nodded, my resolve hardening. "It's the only way to get their attention, Lena. They don't respect me unless I do something extraordinary. If I can pull off a luxury trip of my own, they'll have no choice but to see me for once." Lena was silent for a moment, then shrugged. "Okay, but how are you going to do that? You don't have a passport or the cash for a trip like that." I looked at her, a sly grin forming. "I'm going to fake it." Her eyebrows shot up. "Wait, what? You're going to pretend?" "Exactly," I said, my confidence growing with every word. "I'll post on social media. Make it look like I'm living the dream. I'll borrow some clothes, find a nice location for photos. They'll never know." We spent the next few days planning every detail. I borrowed some clothes from Lena, outfits that looked expensive even though they weren't, and we found a local luxury resort that allowed people to take photos on their grounds for a fee. It was a stretch, but it was all I could afford. When I posted my first picture, a photo of me lounging by the pool with a fancy drink in hand, the reactions came in fast. My friends were impressed. But soon, something strange started to happen. My family saw the post. I didn't think much of it at first, but then my phone buzzed. It was a message from my dad. "We need to talk. Now." My heart dropped as I read the message. My dad had seen my post. The whole family must have seen it by now. I had no idea how they'd react, but one thing was for sure. The stakes were higher than ever. I spent the rest of the evening stressing, trying to figure out how to explain myself. Was I going to get punished? Would they kick me out? I had no clue what was coming next, but I knew I was in too deep to stop now. The next morning, I sat down with my family for the conversation I'd been dreading. My dad didn't waste any time. He put his phone on the table, showing me my post, my fake luxury vacation. "What's this?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. I swallowed hard, my nerves at an all-time high. But before I could answer, the doorbell rang, and my phone buzzed again with another message. The words on the screen made my blood run cold. "Is everything okay with Sophie? We're planning a trip soon, and we want her to be included." I was sweating. My dad's eyes never left me as he stared at the phone screen, then back at me. "What's this about?" he repeated, more quietly now. I took a deep breath. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by the need to explain myself. "I did it to prove a point," I said, trying to hold my ground. "You never think I'm good enough for anything. I'm always the one left behind, and I'm tired of it. I wanted you to see what it feels like to be ignored, to be treated like I don't matter." My dad's face softened, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't look angry. He looked guilty. "Sophie," he began slowly, "I didn't realize how much this was hurting you. I thought I was giving you space to grow, but I see now I've been pushing you away. We didn't mean to make you feel like this." I had expected anger, maybe even punishment, but instead, he seemed to genuinely understand. My mum, who had been quiet the entire time, finally spoke up. "We've been so caught up in our own lives, we forgot to check in with you. I'm sorry, Sophie." Relief flooded through me. It was like the weight I had carried for years was finally lifting. The emotional release was almost overwhelming, and for a second, I felt a tear slip down my cheek. I wasn't invisible anymore. They saw me. They finally understood how deeply their actions had affected me. It felt surreal, hearing them admit that they had been wrong. I had fought for my voice, and it had been heard. The consequences of my actions were immediate. My family realized how much they had taken me for granted. Max, who had always stayed silent, awkwardly apologized for not sticking up for me more. Emily, who had never understood the tension between us, gave me a big hug, whispering, "I'm sorry, Sophie." And my dad? He promised that this wouldn't happen again. He invited me on the next trip they were planning, this time as an equal, not as an afterthought. But it wasn't just about the trip anymore. It was about the change in our family dynamic. We were finally having honest conversations, ones we should have had years ago. The truth was out in the open. A few weeks later, we went on that trip together. It wasn't the luxury vacation I'd imagined, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that I wasn't sitting at home alone while everyone else had fun. I was part of the family for real this time. I wasn't the last one picked. I was included, seen, and valued. I didn't need to fake a life for social media to prove my worth. What I needed was for my family to see me for who I really was, and that's exactly what happened. We had our issues, but for the first time in years I felt like we were finally on the same page. That moment, sitting at the dinner table with my family, laughing and sharing stories, I knew something had changed. I wasn't the invisible one anymore.